Hello and welcome to Art 13131 again. We're still in week 1, as you can see by the weekly assignment schedule. I've also posted this weekly assignment schedule under syllabus on the Canvas page. So if you look on the left-hand sidebar, you will see syllabus. Once you click on that and get in there, you'll see that and other handouts I'm going to give to you. They'll be there. So look for the weekly assignment schedule. You can print it out and keep track of the assignments you have completed and what I've asked you to work on possibly, and also keep track of where we are in the term. So on Monday we did assignment 1. Now we're working on assignment 2, which is shoe from memory and a shoe from life. So what that means is a shoe from your memory and a shoe, one that you're not looking at, and other than in your mind, and a shoe from life, which you're going to actually set up in front of you with a good light source. Now, after this video, watch the other 2 videos I posted for assignment number 2. One is on holding the pencil correctly for shading. There's different ways to hold a pencil for shading. If you haven't already gotten into this with drawing and shading before, there's an overhand grip, which is best for shading when you're using the side of the pencil and whatnot. It explains all of that. You want to get at least 7 levels, 5 to 7 levels of tone from very light to very dark. And the way you do that is by pressing very lightly and increasing your pressure on the pencil to get more graphite out on the paper. If you're pressing very hard, it becomes very dark. Pressing very light, it becomes very light, and everything in between are the midtones. So very light, midtones, and dark tones is what you need to show a lot of contrast, and so that you are creating shape to your subject that you're drawing. Otherwise, if there's no shading, it becomes flat, like a 2-dimension. You want to create a 3-dimension image on your paper, and that's the way to do that is showing the shape by where the light is hitting on your subject and where the light is not hitting on your subject, and this shows the shape, whether it's round or creased or folded or has sharp edges or textures. And then you're going to work with the actual color of your subject matter, in this case shoes. If they're very dark, then it's a darker tone. If it's a very light, it's a lighter tone. But within those light and dark tones, from the color of the shoe, you're going to have other light and dark areas depending on where the light is shining on your shoe, where your light source is coming from, what direction it's coming from. So that's all explained in the other video about shading for beginners. It talks about light source. It uses an apple in particular, and the apple and the light source is shown. The shading is shown where you're going to shade on the apple to give it its shape, which is round. Because light shines on one side where the light is coming from, and then it sort of gradually diminishes into a shadow area. And that's where all the midtones are, from light to very midtones, and then the darker tone. It explains it in both videos, so make sure you watch those before you attempt assignment number 2. Shoe from memory and shoe from life. Then there's 2 drawings to this. They can be on the same page if you want. One shoe is something that you're remembering a shoe to be. Maybe a shoe you have seen or a shoe you have, but you're not looking at it. It's not in front of you. You're using your memory for it. Then you draw a shoe that you actually set up in front of you. I'm going to show you some examples of shoes now. Now, you'll notice the ones without shading are very flat. They are not showing much shape, like this one, this one, this one. This one has a little bit of shading, but not very much. This one's starting to have a little bit more shading, but it's not, it's more color than graphite, so I will show you a graphite shoe. Now this one has some shape to it because of all the light and dark areas from shading. Light and dark areas. Now, if you haven't never noticed, everything you're looking at has light and dark areas. Look around the room. Everything is affected by your light source. Where the light is actually hitting on whatever you're looking at will be lighter than the areas that are in the shadow area. And then there's gradual transitions from light to dark within those areas, and those are called the midtones. My birds are going crazy, so sorry about that. Here's a shoe that is very shaded, very well shaded as well. The very light areas are the reflection areas from light shining in on the shoe. These are picking up a lot of light and have a light reflection. We call them highlights. So the very lightest part of the shoe are because of the highlights from your light source. The very darkest areas are where there's no light shining on the shoe, like in the dark side of the inside of the inside of the shoe there. There is no light shining there, so that's very dark. Back in here, underneath the where the laces go, in the front of the shoe, where there's a shadow area caused by the lace area, leather. All these folds in the front of the shoe, there's light and dark areas to them because of where the light is hitting and where the light is not hitting. And then there's gradual transitions into one from the other. They don't suddenly just go. Some do, but most don't. They have a gradual transition from light to darker areas. There's a mid-tone in there. There's a mid-tone around this spot before it becomes darker. You see that? So start noticing how many levels of tone you're looking at in whatever you're going to draw. Really start noticing where those light areas are and where those dark areas are, and you're going to put them in. First, of course, you're going to make a gesture drawing, which I'm going to provide a few videos of that too. I'll put them up as well. Well, look into the gesture drawing on objects, where you quickly sort of just get a map out the shape of your, in this case, a shoe. You map it out very lightly with your pencil, so you can erase it if you need to. Map out where the shoe is. Then look at that compared to your subject, and then make adjustments as you're going along. Well, I made this too long here, or too thin here, or too tall here, or too fat here. Then adjust that before you start shading. And keep looking at your subject, or in this case, if you're using memory, then you're going to be referring to your memory. Is that too fat back here from what I remember? Is that too long over here, or too thin over here from what I remember? Then you work on that. If you're looking at your shoe in the life, still life, or the life shoe, you can see where you are too tall and too high. Maybe you want to measure it out with your pencil. Hold it up at arm's length to your subject and measure how long one thing is compared to another. Alright, that's another way to measure. And then once you have the proportions down, and the bend in the shoe at the top here where the toes are, and some of the other things, then start maybe mapping out where some of these dark areas are very lightly, or where the sewn leather is on the shoe, and then the sole sewn in possibly, and then the sole down here. Start mapping out where those darker tones are going to start coming in. And then start shading in your shoe where you see them. Now I always say, if you notice the light and dark and all the midtones in your subject and you put them on the drawing where they belong, it'll come to life. You'll start seeing this shoe appear right there on the paper. Whatever you're drawing will start appearing because you're noticing all of the light and dark areas. You've got the right proportions down. Now what you don't want to do is put a line around, a border line around everything, because the shoe doesn't have a border line on it. It's just where shades end and the background begins for around the whole shoe. It's where that shade ends and that background ends. That's defining the border or the edge. There's no line there, okay? There's not even a line here. This is a shade meeting another shade, and then you perceive a line. You see an edge. There's no line. It's an edge, or where the border of the shoe is, or where the edges of the shoe are. Now there's a faint line right here, I see, but we call it like a shading line because it's not like a writing line necessarily. So there might be a few lines in here, but most of it is shading, and there's certainly no line around the border of the shoe. Okay, there's no line around the border of the shoe. That's where the shading meets other shading. Shading on the shoe meets the background. Or around the shoe, in a lot of cases, there is no line. Like right in here, there's no lines. This is shading that meets other shading. That's all it is. And that defines where that fold is without a line. So you have to start noticing that as well. Okay, so draw your shoe and get your proportions. Don't put a border line around it. Don't put lines where there are not and there's only shading. Notice that. Start noticing where the shading is without lines. Okay, and that's going to help your drawing a lot, because it's not like these other shoes where they draw a border line around everything. Those are flat, cartoony shoes. They're illustrations that are not accurate to a real shoe. These are not accurate to real shoes. They look like shoes, but they don't have any shading. There's border lines around everything. There's no border line around the lace. I mean, I guarantee it. Look at your lacing, and there's no border line around it. It's just shading that meets other shading. So I want to emphasize that over and over, because what happens is students will send that to me, and they have lines around everything. Same with this one. Now what you want is a lot of contrast. You want to really bring out that dark area. It's almost black. And you want to bring out the very light area. And then you want to have all the midtones, all the tones that are in between very light and very dark. You want all that in your drawing to show its shape. Contrast brings shape. It brings a 3D appearance. And that's what you want to happen on your shoes. Also, when they're sitting on a surface, you have a cast shadow underneath them where the light is not hitting. In this case, I think the light is hitting from the top left, because you have a shadow under the shoe right in here, and right on here on the right side of the shoe. And even on the lace, there's a cast shadow on the surface that the shoe is on. But you want to notice all those things. Don't put a border line around the shoe, and don't put the border line around everything. There might be a little bit of a line here and there, but it's a shading line. It's a thicker line, a bolder line, possibly. Right in here, the bold line. See, it's not like a writing line. All right, so I'll leave that up to you. You can get these images on Bing Images or Google. I prefer Bing, but if you would rather go to Google, that's fine too. Here's another example of a really well shaded shoes. Cast shadows on the table, or whatever surface it is. Lights and darks to everything. Shading that meets other shading without lines. That's what you're looking for, okay? So watch the videos. Go for these shoes. And I'm going to show the agenda again. The homework is a drawing of choice, so this is a freebie. But I want you to use what you've just learned in assignment number 2. Look for shading. Look for proportions. Look for where shades meet other shades without lines. And draw something. It's up to you, but I prefer you draw something you're actually looking at rather than an imaginary thing, unless you're really good at that. And you're going to bring all the shading into everything. Usually in imaginary drawings for beginners, they become flat, like cartoon things, and that's not reality. What we're doing in this class is reality drawing. Okay, this is realism as best as you can see it, and recreate it on a two-dimensional plane so that it looks like a 3-dimension. Okay, so the homework, I call it homework, but in this class we're calling it an assignment because it's online. You could do it at any time. I'd like you to keep doing all the assignments in concession. So go to 1, go to 2, go to 3, and on the way down. Don't skip weeks and don't skip assignments because they all build upon each other. And all the supportive videos I'm going to provide as well to each one of these, a lot of these anyway. Some won't, but most of them will have supporting videos where it gives demonstration and more instruction, okay, and examples. And that's what you want to watch before you attempt your assignment. Now, when they're on the assignment page, under modules, you'll see the video first, watch the videos, and then you'll see assignment. That's where you're going to put your first attempt. You're going to upload it. Now, I keep these videos each semester, so although I said last week a certain date, that's actually on the assignment page. You'll see what the due date is. I'm saying that when I post videos in 1 week, send them to me by the Wednesday of the following week. You want to upload them onto Canvas by the following week, Wednesday. That gives you, basically a whole week or longer if you started on Monday to do your work and send it to me your first attempt. And I will critique it, and if I want you to do more to it for a better grade, I will let you know. Okay? Otherwise, you're probably getting a C on your first attempt. If you want B's and A's, and I have more suggestions, then you do work on your assignment more, okay? And then you send it back to me, and I look at it again. And then I up the grade, or I ask you to do more. And this can go on all term if you want to. So everybody has a chance to get a very good grade on all the assignments if you work hard on them. If you just want to get a C, then the minimal, you may be able to do that. I'll let you know as we go along. If it's too minimal and it looks like you just spent 15-20 minutes on something, I'm not going to like it. And it's probably more like a D grade rather than a C. Like I mentioned before, each assignment is like a class period. And in a face-to-face situation, a class period is almost 3 hours. So with breaks and setup and teardown, I'm at least asking you to put 2 hours of effort into each drawing. And I can tell when you do that or you don't do it. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. To spend the whole class period or a good 2/3 of the class period on your drawing. Okay, so go ahead and get busy with these, and if you have any questions, please contact me through Canvas in the email provided there, and ask questions, and I will respond to you shortly, all right? Within the day, maybe, in most cases, and then a lot of time it's the next day. All right, thank you very much.